Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Each episode, you'll dive into conversations with top entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business leaders, unlocking the secrets to building profitable relationships that drive growth and success. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, presented by Leduc Entertainment. Today we are sitting down with Stephen Hébert, criminal defense attorney at law. Stephen, how are you?
I'm great.
Welcome to the show. Can you start out by telling us a little about yourself and a little bit about your business?
Absolutely. My name is Stephen Hébert. I've been a practicing attorney for 22 years. However, I've been in private practice since July of 2010. I am a former prosecutor. I also did a stint with a big silk stalking firm, as I like to call it. But certainly just kind of needed to be on my own because I just don't play well with others. And, really been happy. Never looked back since. Been really happy since 2010.
And can you tell us a little bit about the people that you help? What are some of the pain points that they experience when they're coming to you for help?
Well, that's one of the surprising things that I think a lot of people really don't quite comprehend, because maybe it's just the kind of things we don't talk about with our neighbors or over the dinner table because we're embarrassed about it. But most of my clients are overwhelmingly first-time offenders. And I think a lot of people are really quite shocked to find how one bad decision can suddenly get you in the hot seat of the criminal justice system. And it's shocking because a lot of people just don't really understand how things work, and they don't really like the way it feels when they're the party that's been put there. So, I think a lot of the people I help are not hardened criminals the way a lot of people would tend to kind of present it that way. It's a lot of just one bad decision, and suddenly you find yourself there.
And I was going to say, and you practice in Louisiana, you practice in New Orleans, correct? Or on the West Bank, correct?
Well, my office is actually, I have an office on each side of the river,
Okay.
just because the demand is kind of geared me that way. But we do, when the fee justifies it, I will go all over the state of Louisiana. I've handled cases in Shreveport, Monroe, all across Northeast, as well as far as west over in Calcasieu.
Okay.
When we're talking about misdemeanor violations and those kinds of things, the fee doesn't justify driving that far.
Right.
So I generally stay in the metro area when we're talking about misdemeanor offenses.
I was going to say, and that's what I was going to say is we're right in carnival time right now, and I was going to say that it turns out that one bad decision is not all too far away.
Well, we have seen a reduction of that. NOPD in more recent times has seemed to be far more focused on violent crime, which I think probably most of my client base. Those poor decisions we see mainly being made out at the airport, which is in Jefferson Parish. So,
Really?
I get a lot of Jefferson Parish cases because of the visitors coming and going from New Orleans might have had a little bit too much to drink, making some bad decisions while before they get on the plane. So
that makes. I was going to say no Kenner bra.
There is a lot of stuff in Kidder, bro. There's no doubt about that. But like I said, I think right now, for the past 5 years, the overwhelming majority of my state work has really been in Jefferson Parish. And I think that's part of the product of Jefferson Parish growing as well. I don't think their crime rates are necessarily up. I think their whole population is growing. And they don't quite have the focus of that. But at the same too, I think with NOPD attrition rates, as their manpower has gone down, I think that has forced them really to focus on violent crime. And most of the people who are getting arrested for violent crime generally can't even afford a lawyer, and they're mainly being represented by the Public Defender's Office. So that's kind of where we've seen the slate of cases. But I also do a lot of federal work, and the Eastern District is in downtown New Orleans, and so that's where my downtown office really comes into play.
And you used to work as an assistant district attorney, is that correct?
I did. I did 2 different stints. I guess I couldn't. It really doesn't matter who runs the DA's office. And working at a DA's office in the state is a pie eating contest where the award is more pie. And so you do a good job. What do? They give you more pie to go and eat. But it was a great training ground. It was an awesome job and a horrible job at the same time. But I think ultimately, I believe in our system, and I could be on either side of the table. But I think what really kind of hit the road, or where I needed to leave, it just kills my soul to work for somebody else. I just don't like someone else telling me how to do things. I'm a much better big chief than a little Indian. And, I just got to the point where, I kind of needed to be on my own, doing my own thing.
And can you tell us a little bit about, because I told you I was going to bring it up because I find it fascinating. Can we talk a little bit about your background in boxing and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Well, the boxing thing is actually kind of funny because I think at that time in my life, when I picked it up, no one would ever consider me to be a fighter. Some buddies I had in high school drugged me to the boxing gym in Monroe, Louisiana. I was living there just working, wasn't going to school or anything at 19. And, I went with 3 other guys that consider themselves to be big, bad bar brawlers. The first time we sparred, 2 of them quit and didn't come back. Me and another guy went and had our first fight. We both lost, but he didn't come back after that. And I kept after it the whole time through. And, I think one of the things I figured out early on was it wasn't necessarily the most talented guy that would always win. It was usually the more prepared guy. And I really just kind of knew if I worked hard enough and outworked the other guy, I could win. And even though I wasn't necessarily very good at boxing to begin with, I could just get myself in much, much, much better shape, and I could just outwork the guy. And it was interesting, though, over the course of the years of doing that, though, I started to develop some skills and actually turned out to be pretty good. But that has its shelf life. It causes brain damage when you get hit in the head. And I had my 48th match right before I started law school in 1999. And I just thought that was the perfect time to transition away and quit. And, some great experiences. I'm so glad I did it. It really was a character building experience. And I know usually we kind of cringe when we hear that word, but it was, and I'm glad I did it with my life. Now, I think later on in life, when I got into my 40s, I suddenly put on a bunch of weight. And I think that's when I finally started to get my practice kind of in line where, figured it out and kind of could work things. And so I had a little extra time for me. And I decided I want to get back in shape. And I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And, combat sports, the first year is always tough because everyone is beating your ass. Whether it's boxing, you're just taking a certain amount of skull druggings. And, I kind of understood that from boxing, but Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was the same thing. But, I really felt like I was playing with house money because, like I said, my last boxing match was in 1999 when I was in my 20s. I never thought I could do something like that again. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. And I had the same kind of approach to it where, I was outworking most guys and wasn't necessarily the best guy starting out, but I was outworking him. And through the process of outworking everybody, I really started to develop a lot of skill. And I even went on to doing competitions, which was even funnier because I think in my mid 40s, I was really in competition shape. I was weighing 155 pounds. I'd show up at these tournaments and pay $120. And they're like, well, the only other guy that's in their 40s is over here. He weighs 100 pounds more. Or you could go to the 18 to 29-year-olds who weigh 155 too. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go there with the 150 with the 29-year-olds because I just paid $120. I want my money's worth. I don't want one match. I want 3 if I can keep winning. And I walked over there and, all these little kids were laughing at me thinking it was funny until I got them on the ground and strangled every single one of them and won. And I actually, started doing well at local tournaments, went on to do a bunch of IBJJF tournaments. Would go to the World Masters tournaments in Vegas and really competed on the national and international levels for a few years.
Wow.
All the way up through purple belt which really at that point it got to where it wasn't fun anymore. I was doing better than I ever was, but it just wasn't fun. And there's really no other reason for me to do it than to have fun. So I think, at that point I've stopped competing, but I still continue to teach. I still continue to train. And I was actually promoted to black belt this past June.
Oh, congratulations.
After 9.5 years of training. And just real hard training too. There are not many black belts walking around the face of the earth. And so certainly I consider that to be a very, big personal achievement.
Well, and can you tell us, I was going to say, you spoke a little bit about how, the boxing career and the jiu-jitsu career taught you to be more prepared than the person you're going against, taught you resilience about, sometimes getting your ass kicked and overcoming things. Can you speak a little bit about how the lessons you learned maybe in the ring prepared you for being in the court?
Well, my first sparring partner at the West Road Boxing Club was a former world champion named Richard Savage. The guy's hands were so fast, you didn't even see him throw a punch. You just saw a blur and then felt a stinging sensation on your face. Okay? And they put me in there. And they said, before they put me in there, they said, well, Stephen, look, don't worry. When, not if, but when he starts kicking your ass too bad, we'll pull him off of you. Just remember what we taught you and work on it. And, I would get in there and I'd swing at him or try a combination, and, every single one of my punches would miss badly, and he would counter and just immediately sting me with 2 or 3 back. And I'd get mad. And so I would try even harder the next combination, miss even worse, and then he would pound me even worse. And it would escalate and escalate until suddenly I'd find myself on my butt. And, through this process, I finally started learning, he was a professional boxer. It didn't matter if it was me or someone else. That was what he was going to do.
Right.
And I couldn't take this personally, even something like someone punching me at the end of my nose. I had to develop the skill of matching calamity with serenity. And even though you're doing something as violent as trying to knock the other guy's head off, remaining calm. And I think that was the biggest thing first, to kind of get in that mindset of doing something as violent as either boxing or jiu-jitsu, which is pretty damn violent within itself, but still trying to keep a clear mindset and clear vision and pay attention to what's really going on and not let your emotions take over. The other thing too is, the art of boxing really is not just throwing haymaker after haymaker. It's the understanding that each punch sets up another punch and knowing what other punch follows that. And the same thing with jiu-jitsu. You're thinking 3 or 4 moves down the road when you make your first move. And this is all applying to the practice, not only the practice of law, but particularly trials. It's funny. All these guys call themselves trial lawyers. They don't really try that many cases. They don't, not compared to us criminal guys. You want to talk to guys who actually try cases? Talk to prosecutors and criminal defense lawyers. And so much of trials is just people don't listen. Just having the skill to be calm and listen to what's coming out of the witness's mouth. There's usually all this wonderful material coming out if you're just paying attention and just grab it and then bang them over the head with it. Most lawyers, if you go down to like civil court or federal court, the lawyers have their questions drafted. And the witness just answered the question, but the lawyer feels the need to stick to his script and keep asking the questions because he is not listening to what's going on. And so I think, as far as being in a trial, I'm, granted I get the butterflies, every time I've been in competition, every time I was in a fight, every time I try a case, I get the butterflies just anybody else, like anybody else. But I have this innate quality of being able to at least to remain calm despite it. to listen despite it, to think clearly despite all of this.
Right.
No matter how much my nerves might be and those butterflies might be churning in my stomach. And I have to tell you, I think in trying cases, I think that's invaluable. And not a lot of people have it. They just don't. And
Right.
I think that's where a lot of cases are really won and lost, is because they're just not listening to what the witnesses are saying.
You know, well, and it's so funny you bring up the butterflies. I remember as a kid being told one time, and it always stuck with me, you know, if you don't get the butterflies before doing something, it means you don't really care. And if you don't have the butterflies, walk away from it. It's not for you. You know, and so I always like associated the butterflies as a good thing. You know, it meant you cared, right?
Well, you know, the funny thing is, I found myself one time being a personal injury plaintiff, and because my wife was T-boned at 37 weeks of pregnancy, and she spent everything's fine, it worked out okay, but she spent the last week of her pregnancy in the hospital, and I remember trying to explain it during my testimony in that case when we're suing the insurance company, of explaining, it's like, no, you don't understand. On the outside, you know, I'll appear cool as a cucumber, but I'm just as uncomfortable as anybody else.
Right.
You know, it's just I know how to basically kind of trudge through those feelings and understand that feeling and doing are two different things.
And can you walk us through a little bit about how you wound up in the legal field? I mean, going from being an amateur boxer and doing all of that, how did you transition? I mean, you talked a little bit about, you know, hanging up your gloves at that certain point and transitioning, but why with a legal field? Was there an impetus for going into the legal field?
Who knows? I mean, gosh, you jump around so much in college. I think at one time I
Yeah.
wanted to be a veterinarian or something like that.
Really?
And I think, you know, I had a mentor at one time in my life who I used to hunt with and that kind of thing. And he was a personal injury lawyer. And I think it might have been more material. In all honesty, it might have been materialistic because I saw him make how much money he made. You know, thinking about, okay, I'm going to go and do all this and, you know, have all this money that he has. But it's funny because I didn't end up anywhere close to that. I do some personal injury work, but it's really, it's more of like from existing criminal clients who feel very comfortable with me and don't feel comfortable with all the billboard lawyers out there, and, you know, come back to me. And if they have a very good case where, you know, I feel confidently about it, I'll take it, that kind of thing. So I've dabbled with some personal injury stuff, but I'm no means call myself a personal injury lawyer. And I used to do more civil work, but it's gotten more and more difficult to do, even with the criminal practice, mainly because criminal defense work is really all done in court and everything else is done in the office.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's hard to be in the office doing that work when you're in court all day. And so that's why I've kind of done less and less civil work and really done more criminal stuff. But the other thing too is that where I excel is in the courtroom, not so much in the office. And so I guess I'm just kind of going to what my skill, where, you know, what I'm best at, you know?
Right. And well, it's that sort of, I mean, would you say that, you know, that because when you're, you know, in the courtroom, there is sort of a performance element to it. Would you relate it to performing in a boxing ring at all? I mean, would you relate those at all in any way?
Yeah, I mean, to somewhat. And but the thing is, it's like a puzzle, you know? I mean, I loved evidence class when I was in law school. I actually loved doing these stupid mock trial competitions, which probably trained me more about trying cases than anything else in law school. You know, really getting in there and practicing, you know, objections and how to respond to objections. And but very much, you know, it's kind of like a Rubik's Cube that fights back, you know?
Right.
And I think when I got to law school, I think that's what I kind of fell in love with, this idea of the trial, of trying to solve a problem, of how are you going to prove your client's case? You know, how are you going to get to that point of the final argument in front of your fact finder to be able to argue what you want to argue. And I think early on in law school, I did fall in love with that. And I think I even had designs of, of being that personal injury lawyer. But I guess when I actually got to actually practicing law, I kind of found out, well, actually, the guys doing the criminal work are the ones that are in court all day. So maybe that's where you need to be,
Right.
Because that's what I really loved.
Can you tell us a little bit about your Martindale-Hubbell rating and the significance of that for those who, might not know, such as myself?
Well, it's really hard for criminal defense lawyers to get that rating, because most criminal defense lawyers do not really do much with Martindale-Hubbell, period. But apparently that was sent to, I think, a number of lawyers. And lawyers, we're pretty critical of each other. We are. And but I was very flattered to see the AV rating, which was the highest possible rating that one could receive. There was a time in between my two different stints at the DA's office where I went to work at a law firm. And look, these guys treated me great. I left the DA's office right before Katrina. And Katrina hit. And I was been there a month. I didn't even know if I had a job, but they stuck by me. And, my time at the firm, every time they had a trial, they were like, go grab Hebert, get Hebert on your case, and they were always amazed because I would, go in, ask what witnesses they wanted me to handle. And then I'd go lock myself in the office and they'd keep coming, trying to tell me things. And I'd be like, no. And they would always be surprised at how easily I could get ready and try the case and how I do when I try the case with them. But I think after 3 years of that, man, it just got clear that my heart wasn't into it. And my work there was wildly inconsistent. Some things I do would be great. Some things would just be poor. And I lost everything in Katrina, but the firm did stick by me. They trained me. They treated me really well. I really am thankful. And frankly, they made me a much better lawyer. I think, something to be said for working at the firms of that structure of having a partner repeatedly tear up all your written work product, telling you do it again, do it again. It's excellent training. But I think, it just really came clear that my heart wasn't into doing it. I was really unhappy doing it. And I think about that time, Kiva Landrum Johnson became the district attorney, and they were forming a violent offender unit. And she taught me into going back to the DA's office. And that's kind of how I went back to the DA's office, that second stint. And I was there through a little bit of Leon Canizero and all that as well. But I guess, that kind of hit its point too. And the other thing too is I just couldn't work that hard for that little money. I don't mind working hard, but we had a son, and I couldn't ask my wife to back off of her work, when she was making good money as well. But certainly, I think that's kind of where that all went. And I really haven't. I've been probably the happiest practicing law when I was on my own and my work was equal to that paycheck or that draw check that I would give myself at the end of the month. And I didn't have someone telling me what to do, that I was making the decisions, kind of thing. And I've really been, there were times and moments I was happy being a prosecutor, happy when I was, probably was never happy at the firm, but nonetheless, if I think for the past 15 years now, certainly I've been really happy to be a lawyer and happy where I am,
Yeah, that's awesome. And was there a clear sign? Was it cumulative, or was there like a clear moment where you said, okay, I got to change this up, I got to do what's best for me? Was there a clear moment where you thought I need to walk away, I guess?
From the firm or from the DA's office?
Either one. I guess what I'm asking is, was there a clear moment where you thought I need to go out on my own and start my own, and make this my own way?
Yeah, I think I got there. It was probably cumulative all around me until I finally realized it.
Right.
And I think a lot of people told me after the fact, Stephen, yeah, we all knew you were going to do that at one point. You're
Right.
that kind of guy. You're not a firm guy. You're not
Right.
a public guy. You're you, and you need to have your own shop. I was probably the last person to know, but absolutely, I got there, and I don't play well with others, I just don't, and that's the other thing too. In my practice, I've kept it small. I've
Right.
never gone the high volume route, mainly because I don't think I can handle having associates.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be fair to them. I
Right.
don't think there's an associate out there where I would be happy with their work because I'm very particular about how I like everything done. So that's why I do it myself.
Yeah. And can you share with us maybe a story of a person, a business, a client that you really saw a transformation in as a result of your help or guidance? Can you maybe share with us, is there a story that sticks out? I'm sure you've got a ton of stories, but is there one that sticks out in your mind thinking back?
There's so many. There
Yeah.
really are. And, and I think a lot of times the ones that really stick out are the cases where someone gets adjudicated not guilty by reason of insanity.
Mm.
And politics has always been involved in the criminal justice system. It's probably creeped its way in a little bit more recently. But there's a way where, sometimes it's like everybody's kind of working together to do the right thing. And I've had two cases where someone was adjudicated not guilty by reason of insanity. Well, one actually was not. It should have been, but I just didn't have the evidence to prove it. And it's really difficult to get there.
Right.
It was actually against the Canizera administration, and they had way overcharged an individual. He was a veteran. He had a PTSD episode. The way he dealt with it, it's the way a lot of veterans deal with it, is by drinking and drugging. And he downed a bunch of hand grenades, blacked out, woke up, had a cut in his hand, had no idea what had happened. He had been in a fight and had something in his hand, and he didn't even hit the person he intended to hit somebody with a wayward punch who nearly hit him in the back of the head, and the guy nearly died.
Oh, wow.
He went to the hospital, got stitches. They were about to discharge him. He threw up while signing the discharging papers. They're like, oh, God, we probably need to do a CT scan. Apparently, he had a brain bleed that was so bad that he went into ICU and was in a coma for 3 weeks. Thankfully, pulled through. But here I have my client who spent the whole time in the Orange Justice Center, never got the proper medication. He would go 3 or 4 days without sleeping until he hallucinated, and then he'd pass out from exhaustion and then sleep a day or two and then come back out of it and kind of repeat the cycle over and over
Right.
again. Real heavy duty PTSD, a lot of other issues. But I think towards the end, we got ready for trial. But they got scared on the eve of trial right before the jury was outside, offered him an aggravated second-degree battery, which is still a pretty serious charge, but it's one of those few charges at the time that you could probate. And it was in front of Judge Karen Herman, who's actually a pretty tough judge. Well, we didn't try the case, but I put on a full-fledged, full-court press at a sentencing hearing. And luckily for me, I got a former Marine that did the pretrial sentence investigation as well. And, after a sentencing hearing and the memos and everything else, Judge Karen Herman gave the guy probation. I thought the DAs were going to just kill it. They just went nuts, lost their minds over it. Well, Anthony, the client, and he shared on social media, and certainly this is all public record, so I don't think violate any confidentiality. But Anthony got out of jail. He immediately, the judge ordered him to pay restitution of the victim's medical bills, which was astronomical. I can't even tell you the number. Anthony went to chef school, became a chef, And within the probationary period, didn't even have to have an extended, I think over 5 years' time, he paid back every single dollar of restitution. He went on to have kids, get married, has become an absolute, complete, and total productive member of society.
Wow.
And that was one we actually absolutely got right. The other one I just recently wrapped up, which was even more bizarre, was a gentleman who was actually from Spain, and his family was from Spain, but somehow ended up at he had serious mental illness. He ended up at an apartment complex in Tremé and ended up shooting and killing someone. We had him adjudicated not guilty by reason of insanity, but that case just came to conclusion. His whole family flew over from Spain. We put on all the evidence of what his life was going to be like, who his therapists were going to be, what would happen if he started to not take his medication or did something wrong. And that case I took all the way from arrest through disposition to being released to home, just I think within the last couple of years or so. That was another one that I really felt really good about.
Wow. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for stopping by and talking to us. If there's anybody out there, any business owner, entrepreneurs, anybody listening could use your services, where can the people find you?
Look, I'm everywhere all over the web. All you gotta do is search my name, Stephen D. Hébert. I have an office on both sides of the river, and my website address is in fact my name, StephenDHébert.com. All you gotta do is text or call me, and we'll go from there.
Stephen, thank you so much again for coming on the show. This has been Partnerships for Profit, presented by Leduc Entertainment. Stephen, thank you again. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, man. It's my pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.